These are the three most critical. It is knowing who your customer is at a very deep level. It's called your avatar, is the acronym that's kind of used in the online community. But it's knowing that individual at a very deep level and knowing what their pain points are, and then taking those pain points or those problems and showing them and demonstrating to them how your product or service can solve that problem. The mistake people make is they don't go deep enough understanding what I call their avatar.
It's time to reinvent.
Welcome to Reinventing Perspectives. Today we have an amazing guest. We have Steve Kilberg. Steve, thank you for joining us. I know that people are going to be so excited for this because if you are an online, you've been thinking about e-commerce, SaaS, and you don't know where to start, or you are just struggling, Steve is here to talk to us about that. So Steve, please tell us, who is Steve and what's your mission?
So my background real quick, I've worked in different companies in the online space for 15 plus years now. I can't believe that I'm dating myself a little bit. I'll call it different parts of the food chain, meaning bigger companies and smaller companies. And that experience has given me, I think, a pretty diverse background, which has been good. A few years back, due to some family issues, I had a job separation and then my elder parents needed some help. And so I made a decision to help them because my siblings had other family responsibilities and I had more flexibility. And so I made a choice to take care of my parents. And so in that window, I needed some flexibility. I couldn't have a job where I was traveling and doing things of that nature. So I said, I got to figure something out. And it's a long story with how I got into e-commerce because I had a number of failed attempts at other opportunities or other online endeavors. But it got into e-commerce and I said to my wife, if I can't make this work in 6 months or get some kind of traction, I'll go back to getting a normal job, etc. Well, we had just enough of a success. So I said, I can't stop now because I got just that little bit of a nudge to keep going. And I'm glad I did because then we started this business from an idea dinner one night and we grew it to 7 figures in sales. Now, the pandemic crushed our business, but that being said, as I know how all of this works, there are some commonalities that any business can apply, whether it's an e-commerce business or a SaaS business, which I'll describe in a little bit here. I'm now coaching and consulting businesses. And one other element I wanted to add is my wife and I were having dinner one night. I said, boy, we could sell this asset. It wouldn't be a home run. We're not going to retire, but still, it would be nice to be able to make a few $100,000 from this. I think anybody listening would say, hey, if I can start a business to sell it for $50,000 or $100,000, $200,000, $3,000, whatever that number is, right? That would be a win, or that would be very beneficial endeavor to go through. Because once you get to that point, you know how all this works because there's going to be a lot of bumps and hurdles you're going to have to go through. That being said, is we chose not to. And again, the pandemic kind of hurt our business. But now what I'm doing is I'm working with a colleague, in addition to coaching and consulting other e-commerce and SaaS businesses, working with my colleague is we're taking these same businesses and we're finding a buyer for them. So we're taking them through that exit experience. And that has been really, really eye-opening and fascinating. So one of the big takeaways I would encourage your audience to listen to. A lot of people have struggled, and it all comes down to belief. I've learned this from experience. But if you're going to build an asset that you have an interest in, you should be thinking from day one is to set it up to sell it. Whether you sell or not is irrelevant. You should be thinking that way, and that'll change how you look at your business from day one.
I'm so excited for this. There's so much that you said there. You kind of gave yourself a timeline to say, look, if this does not get some kind of traction in 6 months, and I think that pressure that you put on yourself, new entrepreneurs, sometimes we can just sort of let time kind of get away with us because we have a hope and a dream and we really want it to work. And I like that you said you tried so many things and they didn't work, and that's part of the process.
It is.
And then you get to this thing and you had to really just build this thing up to a certain point and think about it as an asset. That changes everything because then we're not so all over the place chasing shiny objects. We're looking at how do we create value. I can't wait for you to talk about that as well.
That's a key thing that I will elaborate on in a minute. So what you just talked about was building an asset. Think about it from that perspective. It is truly an asset, especially if somebody's just starting out. You're not going to build the next Facebook or Twitter. Don't think that way. And a lot of people get so, well, I have to invent that. The odds are highly against you, so don't worry about that. Take that stress off of your plate, so to speak, but try to build some kind of an asset that, again, provides value to the marketplace. If I had to simplify it, I would say whatever you are selling, you're going to have to sell something, whether it's a service or a physical product. There's a couple ways to look at that. Again, in e-commerce is actually a physical product, whether it's a coffee mug or it is a software business or even a subscription type service. But a SaaS business is defined as either a software as a service or a subscription as a service. And typically, well, not typically, there's a monthly reoccurring fee that comes with that. If you have an e-commerce business, I would strongly encourage people to think about adding a SaaS component to it. It's like a subscription service. So whatever they're going into, they should be thinking of what can I add on to this to make it a subscription. Why that is so important, and this is critical because it ties into all the other things to making this work, is at the end of the day, you are providing a product or service to the marketplace that solves a problem. And if you're providing value, people will pay you for that. And it's a competitive price, etc. Right? So you have to demonstrate that you can solve this at a reasonable price that people are willing to pay. And then you're basically creating a relationship with that customer. That's in the simplistic term how all this works. And if you can continue to provide enough value, enough people statistically will pay you, and you can then grow your business, which is really that asset. If you get to a certain spot, you don't have to have millions of dollars coming in to sell these assets. You would be shocked at the businesses that we have sold in the last year that have marginal profit, a number that is not so great. It's not like it's, oh my God, this has to be making $1 million a year, because again, that is unrealistic for someone, especially if they're starting out. Just getting to that point where you're even making $100 a month consistently, then $500 a month consistently, then $1,000 a month. If you can do that month over month, and at that point, you're going to figure some things out saying, okay, now I'm providing this product or service to the marketplace. They are paying me, and a lot of the light bulbs are going to come off because you're going to start to see how all this works, and then you start to add on more to that. But again, it ties back to thinking about this as an asset from day one, is building something but providing value to the marketplace. So I rambled on a little bit there, but I wanted to kind of interject that point if that was helpful, Priscilla.
That was very, very helpful. You touched on so many things that sometimes we don't think about because we're just thinking about the excitement that we have to start this thing. And it's so important to get all those things in place because entrepreneurship is hard, and to put in a lot of work that's sort of not well thought out, or to put in a lot of work that you're not really maximizing what you're getting out of, it's sort of really like a lost opportunity for the amount of work people give their lives to starting businesses. So thank you for sharing that, Steve. I'm going to jump into this because I know people have seen e-commerce, SaaS, they got so many questions. What are the top 3 areas that you'd say all e-commerce or SaaS business owners should focus on?
If I had to boil it down to 3, and there's a few more, but these are the 3 most critical. It is knowing who your customer is at a very deep level. It's called your avatar, is the acronym that's kind of used in the online community, but it's knowing that individual at a very deep level and knowing what their pain points are, and then taking those pain points or those problems and showing them and demonstrating to them how your product or service can solve that problem. The mistake people make is they don't go deep enough understanding what I call their avatar. Now, the great news is we are in early 2023, and the release of some new artificial intelligence tool has hit the marketplace. Artificial intelligence is not new. It's been around for a while, but there's been some newer developments, newer tools in the marketplace, which has really opened up the floodgates to a lot of people. If you can utilize those tools, because that's what they are, they're just tools to help you do some of that research a lot quicker. Because in the past, big companies had to have big budgets, right? And they had to do with these focus groups and do all this stuff to really understand their customer. You don't have to do that at all anymore. Even prior to these AI tools, you could do it online. But now with the AI, you can do it literally in a matter of minutes. But you have to know where to go and how to prompt the AI tools to get that data. That's the hard part. But the good news is it's available to anybody if you know what those prompts are. So the reason that that's important is when you understand those frustrations, those pain points, those challenges of your ideal customer, you can then demonstrate through video, through written word, and through marketing how you can solve that problem. Because again, you're going to need at the end of the day to get eyeballs to your, if you're again trying to e-commerce or SaaS, you're going to need to get eyeballs to your website or however you're going to actually take that transaction. And you don't need to do anything clickbaity or any spammy or anything nefarious. You don't need to. A lot of people fall into that trap. It's not needed to do this ethically and do it the right way, because you can still build this asset up and sell it, right? That's the number one thing, is knowing who your avatar is and getting really, really deep on who that person is. The next thing is to build an email list. I know a lot of people kind of cringe at that. I used to, because you're like, oh, I don't want to build a list. It takes a lot of work, and I don't want to spam people, because nobody wants to be receiving spam, and nobody wants to, if you're an ethical person, wants to be sending out spam. However, at the end of the day, what is an email list? Now it's also an SMS list, right? And SMS is the same way. Nobody wants to spam people through text messages and through SMS. I get that, right? However, if you use it effectively, at the end of the day, you are opening up an opportunity to solve a problem for either your current customer or your existing customer. And what is it? It's actually eyeballs and attention, right? That is how a small business, especially a new one starting out, can compete with big companies. I'm going to give you a good example. When we were running our e-commerce business and we were chugging along, my wife and I were fortunate enough, both like to travel. We were doing well enough. We were traveling the world. And here was a guy on his laptop literally traveling the world, and I was competing against one of our top competitors was running television ads, which is the most expensive medium to get sales in primetime television. And I would see those ads and I would laugh. Once I understood what was going on here, I'm like, I'm a guy with my laptop, but I'm not spending millions of dollars. I'm spending just a little bit of money here, but yet we're making profit and we're growing the business. And yet we were traveling the world and our business was growing. And it was crazy. Once I understood how all those things came together, it was mind blowing. But you had to go through all those rough spots to get to that. So that's the second one, is building a list and then effectively, not spamming people, but you have to communicate with people frequently. A lot of people think, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to spam them. People are not thinking about our business as much as we are because it's what we do. They're busy with their lives. We all are on email lists. We get an email. You're like, oh, yes, I know them, but I don't have time for this. I'm not going to bother to read this. I'm not going to unsubscribe. And even if I keep getting emails, I'm not going to do that. And if I wanted to, I will do that. And that's okay, right? Understand that that's okay. But at the end of the day, though, people are not paying attention to us as much as we think they are or we would like them to. But that's the reality. But that's why you need to build a list, because then it becomes just more numbers per se. And you don't even have to have a big list to make that list produce revenue and profit for you. Which leads into the third point, is if you build a list, you can create sales with people on multiple occasions, because at the end of the day, you need to know your numbers of your business front to back and back to front. That is one thing that I did understand very acutely when I started this, is I needed to know my numbers. And I literally knew my numbers down to the penny. And that's how I could compete with one of our biggest competitors who was running primetime television ads, because I didn't need to. I was running ads on just social media and we were competing. We weren't making millions of dollars, but I was generating tons of revenue and profit for us to be able to grow our business to 7 figures. Again, once I understood how all that stuff works. So the three things again are knowing your avatar at a deep level, which I did know, so we could communicate and show them how we could solve their problem. We built a list. We didn't do a great job of it. That was one of the mistakes we made, but I understood this. Now I really understand it because I'm selling these businesses. It's the number one mistake every business that we sell makes, is I'll ask them, how big is your list and how much is it making you? And they don't know the answers. The latter part of that question is they don't know how much it's making them, and they should know that down to the penny every month. And they don't, or down to the dollar, and it's sad because they're leaving money on the table when they go to sell their asset. But that's a little bit related. And the third thing again is just knowing your numbers.
Just a quick ask. If you're finding this information helpful, please share it with someone that you know would love this conversation and would find this information beneficial. Thank you again for listening in. And let's jump back into our conversation. For the new entrepreneur who's starting and they're looking at e-commerce and they're thinking, wow, there's so much competition in just everywhere you look, because it looks like everybody just jumped online, and they're thinking to themselves, well, how am I going to compete? I like that you say you're watching this big time competitor running the TV ads and you're just giggling a little bit. I love that, because when you know what you're doing, the mindset, kind of that overwhelm of, gosh, everybody's doing it.
Oh man, because we played in a very competitive space. My wife and our e-commerce business was in the fitness space. So as you can imagine, fitness is highly competitive, right? We were selling smaller items that were lower ticket. But for me early on, it was just trying to figure out how can we make this work? Because I just wanted something to sell, right? And I pushed through and got to that point. But the critical thing that I would tell people, which I think relates back to your question, is if you're going to get into e-commerce, don't chase the money. You're like, oh, I can make all this money selling this widget. Don't do that, because here's what's going to happen. In 6 months from now, when you get a challenge, because you will, are you going to be able to push through that challenge that you have on this product that you're going to make a bunch of money on? And the odds are, no, you're not, because you're going to get shiny object, because you're going to get new things coming at you all the time, and you're going to shift your attention, which will not allow you to overcome that challenge. So pick something you have an interest in. Yes, the money is important, but don't start off from this thinking, I'm going to sell this widget because I can make a bunch of money from this. And I see people make that mistake time and time again, because with e-commerce, there is capital that's going to be required to some degree. Now, I don't want to scare people and say you need tons of money. 2020, we made some decisions to go down a path looking back that I would make different decisions because again, hindsight is always 2020. So in the e-commerce world, there's drop shipping you can do. The challenge with drop shipping is you're going to have smaller margins. So you really have to know your numbers at that point. You can still make it work, but you really have to know your numbers. So if you were to decide to just sell something else, I would start off with a lower ticket item, less than $30, less than $50 that a customer would actually pay for that, because the cost of getting that product in your hand and shipping it out is going to be around $5 to $7 max. That's the price point they should be thinking of. Because our product, quite frankly, when we were getting ours was $1.90 to get it from our factory into our warehouse per unit, right? So I knew that down to the penny. Then when I factored in the shipping cost, that was a few dollars more. So I knew going out the door what it would cost. So then what we were selling it for, I knew how much more money I had left over that I could spend on marketing and advertising. And then the numbers kind of unfold from there. It took us a while to figure that out, but now that I know how this works, it's just you repeat that process over and over again.
Hey, small business family, quick pause here. If you've been listening and thinking, I need help getting clear on my message and how to actually market this amazing thing I've created, I've made something just for you. It's called the Clarity Intensive, and it's 2 focused sessions, one-on-one, where we untangle your ideas, map out your next best move, and build a foundation for real business momentum. If you're done thinking what's the right thing to do, and you're ready for a customized strategy that fits you, this is for you. You'll find the link in the show notes, or you can visit the website www.reinventingperspectives.com/shop, and you'll see our Clarity Intensive one-to-one marketing coaching. Let's get back to the show. Now we're talking about the marketing and the advertising. The cost of advertising is just creeping up. Maybe you can speak to 2 things. One, doing it well, best use of that money, as well as you're in a limited budget, you're just starting out. Where should you focus?
Great question. Well, I would still tell people to use social media if you're choosing to do paid advertising. Now, again, if budgets are really tight, then don't do that, because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to burn a lot of money. And so then you would have to hire somebody to help you through that process. Let's just do 2 different paths here. If you don't have budget, then you can do social media posting. You can do a lot of things. You could reach out to people who are influencers in your niche, in your industry, and see if there's a way you can work out some type of arrangement. That has been an effective way. There's that one path. If you were to do paid advertising, which now I understand how it works, this is what I will always default to. But that being said, is there's some risk involved. And so trust me, I spent a lot of money figuring some things out, hired a lot of coaches to help me navigate some of those areas of like, oh, how does this work? And I'm glad that I did. But at that point in time, again, as I said a minute ago, you have to track your numbers. So what I would encourage people to do, and you can do this actually relatively inexpensively, you have to spend a little bit of money to what I call gather some data and then adjust the dials a little bit. But if you're just starting out, even if you had like $1,000, right? So let's just back this up a step here. If I had this widget I was going to sell and I wanted to at least build an email list to start out for less than $1,000, you can build an email list because you can get leads. Even today at the filming of this video, I was just working with a client. We were getting leads, meaning emails, for about $2 an email. It took us a little bit of time. We had to spend a couple $1,000s to get there based on some of the changes with some of the platforms like Facebook that we're using. But once we got that dialed in, we were getting leads for $2. Some of the changes with the iOS, and I don't want to get too off topic here, but the iPhone adjustments, it's impacted the advertising space, which is one of the reasons why costs have gone up, right? So to keep your costs down, I would encourage people to build a list. Even if it costs you $3, $4, $5, that's okay, because you have, at the end of the day, attention, you have eyeballs. And so once you sell, the hardest cost to get a customer is that very first transaction. As you're building your list, you want people to come back to you and buy over and over again. Building a list, whether you're doing it organically, meaning through social media and other forms of things that aren't going to cost you money, but that's going to cost you time, which is a form of money, or you can spend money and just make it done that much quicker. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to waste some money there.
Let's get to the numbers, because people hear numbers and they're like,
Yes, it scares a lot of people.
Not numbers, Steve. What numbers should they know? What metrics should you be looking at? Because at times we get carried away with all these different kind of numbers that don't actually make a difference in helping you to keep your business open and grow your business. So what numbers should we be looking at?
There are, I used to say three numbers. I'm going to add a fourth one here. The first number, and this ties into now that I'm coaching and we're advising businesses on selling, I am staggered. This is a big takeaway for your listeners. If they get to the point where they know these numbers front to back and back to front, you will be way ahead of the competition that's out there. Businesses that we're selling to this day don't know these three core numbers, even four core numbers, which is mind-boggling. They'll know one of the four, but they don't know all four, and they should track those and know those every day. First detailed number they need to get to, I don't want to scare people saying numbers, but this is pretty simple. It is, what is your initial transaction, average transaction when you're selling your widget, whatever that is. You should know that, because even just looking at some basic nuances, you can figure that out. Most people have a pretty good idea what that is. The second number is, what does it cost you dollar-wise to acquire that customer? You should know that down to the penny. That's one of the numbers that I knew I had to focus on, that I had to detail that one number out. And once I had my numbers kind of dialed in, I knew if I got above a certain level that things were not working, so I had to make adjustments, either come up with new creative or try different things to get that number back down. And this is still applicable to this day. The third number, and probably the most important number that, well, before I get to that one, I'm going to the fourth number that I added in here was the cost to acquire a lead, which is going to be an email and or an SMS. You can do that, lump that together, or you can separate those however you want to, but just start with an email. You should know that number down to the penny as well. The most critical number you need to know, and most business owners do not know this, they have no idea. It's mind-boggling to me, because if once you know these numbers, it'll change how you think about your business, and that is, what is your lifetime value for your average customer? How many customers have you had in the last 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and what is your revenue? And just a simple division calculation. That's it. Because you think about this, if I got 10 customers today, and next month, if 2 of those customers that came back and bought from me again, my revenue, and I got 10 new customers, right? So now I've got 2 repeat buyers, because it's easier to sell to an existing customer because you've provided some value to them. They've recognized, hey, you're a legitimate company, etc. They want to do business with you. That's why you need to communicate them with your email list. Once you do this and you know this lifetime value, that number is going to be higher than your initial average cart transaction. Basic example, if my initial average cart value was $50 and the cost to acquire my customer was $25. Okay, so now I got $25 left over that I can use for advertising and other expenses to run my business, to pay myself, etc. That's my gross margin, right? But if my lifetime value is $100, the light bulb that should go off for people is to say, wait a second, I need to get as many customers in on the front end. I know that number is going to be 100, because if it's 100 minus that 25, that's equals 75. Again, we're not talking calculus here. This is very simple arithmetic, right? If I have $75 to spend to acquire a customer, it's not going to cost me $75, especially if I know, or $75 in terms of profit or gross profit, right? It's not going to cost me that much. So you can take that money and fuel it into your growth. That's when you start adjusting the dials to spend more money, to acquire more customers, acquire more email addresses. And once you experience that and you know those numbers down to the penny, you will never think the same way about your business, and you will allow yourself to grow your business. And that is how you can compete with a company like we did, because I knew those numbers, that was running primetime television ads, because I knew those numbers down to the penny. And I was staggered back then that I knew this, and I was by myself. Now that I'm coaching and consulting with other businesses, and I get to see their financials, I get to see their business model, what they're doing, and yet we're still able to sell these assets, and yet they're making these same exact mistakes. So think about that. We're helping them sell these assets, and you're still making these mistakes. If they weren't making those mistakes, their asset would be worth so much more money, which at the end of the day, if you're a business owner, if you're going to sell it, you want to make the most money. We want you to as well. But because you don't know those things, it's not changing the way you think about your business. Valuation of your business is lower because of that.
I'd like to talk about your journey a little bit. You talk about joining masterminds and getting a lot of coaching. To someone who's starting out and they're seeing all these high ticket masterminds, let's call them that, and they're not sure, can I spend that money? First of all, it sounds like a lot of money because you're just starting out, and is it even going to be worth it?
Oh, that's such a great question, because I've joined many masterminds. Some are better than others. It depends on where you're at in your journey, right? Because we're all just going on a journey. But at the end of the day, we're just taking a journey. We want to transform and grow all this to the next level. And I would encourage people to, this is my opinion, I would strongly encourage people to get a coach or to join a mastermind. And you want to be around people that are in the same genre, like they're at the destination you want to get to. And what they're going to do by joining this mastermind, and it's going to be expensive. The reason that they're paid is a couple reasons. Is if you don't pay, you're not going to pay attention. I mean, think about this. If you spend thousands of dollars to join this mastermind, you're going to pay attention and hopefully do the work that they're telling you and the relationships you're building, right? Because that's the other key takeaway with joining a mastermind is the relationships you're going to get from that. The reason that people charge high ticket fees for those things is to weed out people. That's one of the core reasons they do it, because if it's free, no one's going to do the work, and then people are going to complain because they're not doing the work. That's really what it comes down to, is they're not doing the work, and they complain and say this stuff doesn't work and this is a scam and blah blah blah, and they're the ones that are really hurting themselves at that point. And I know this because I did this when I was first on. I'm like, I'm not spending that kind of money for something that's ridiculous. I'm smart, I can figure this out. And then I didn't. I struggled, so that I finally had to swallow my pride a little bit and realize we had to pay to have someone help us. And I've joined many masterminds, and we're actually going to join another one here, at some point. We got to find the right one, because as you go through your journey, you will kind of outgrow the one that you're in, and you're like, okay, I need to find a better one that's around where I'm now at in my journey based on what my goals are with the business.
This is a selfish question for me, Steve, because I have been following Russell Brunson and I read the books. My mind was blown away. So when I saw that you got the ClickFunnels 2.0 award, I was like, okay.
You're going to love this. Look at this right here. This book right here, all the notes. And this book right here, all the notes I got right there. Oh, yes. It's literally sitting right here. I read it a lot. You can see all the note tabs on there. Look at that. All the notes. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had to show you that because you said that.
For those who are listening, Steve was holding up right on his desk. He's got the Expert Secrets book. I'm just like, Steve, I've read those books. My mind was blown away. But at the same time, the overwhelm.
Yes, very true. It is overwhelming.
I thought I could do it myself, but of course I couldn't. My question to Steve, please tell us more.
That's a great place to start, is read the books, right? Now, again, it's going to be overwhelming, right? But you're going to have to, and one of my mentors has said this to me, it's going to be hard to kind of accept this, but it's just the truth, right? You can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. And that's just the reality of it, right? And it's like anything in life, right? So if you're going to do something, you have to have consistent action. And it's painful to say this because you want to get to that destination today. I'm the same way. I want to get there tomorrow. And it just doesn't work that way, right? We've all done this in our lives, is that we want to get to a destination. And really, it's a transformation, right? We want to get there as quick as possible with the least amount of effort. I get it. It's just human nature to think that way. Some things can move in that direction, especially if you get into a mastermind or get the right coach. A good coach will tell you, ignore all that stuff. There's some benefits there, but just ignore all this. And if you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is what's laid out in this book, the last 2 Comma Club, I just thought of this. Russell got on stage and said, who here has read my books? These 2 books right here, .com Secrets and Expert Secrets, right? Over half the crowd raised their hand. There was 4,000 people there. And he stopped and he said, why are you here? Because he said, everything I know is in these books. I devoted my life to writing these books. If you just apply the stuff that's in these books, you don't need to be here. Here's what he said. He was upfront about that, which is kind of like, what? What? But again, but we go to those live events because we want the human connection. We want to build those relationships, right? So at the end of the day, it can be overwhelming, but you just have to follow what's laid out and just do one step at a time and do consistent action. One of the key takeaways, as Russell talks about in the books, is that he talks about what's called publishing every day, right? Which is publishing content, whether it's through Twitter, whether it's through Facebook or Instagram or whatever that is, or your blog or your website. You must publish some form of content. That is the free version. So if people don't have the capital right now, it is start publishing every day. Now, Russell is a big advocate of video, which I am. Right now, we're doing this on video, which you and I both have no problem doing video. A lot of people are hesitant with that, and I get that. But my advice to them would be, you have to kind of get over it, right? You will find haters out there. And if you believe in what you're doing and you want to go through this transformation, you just have to ignore it, right? Like if you have something, a skill set that you have, and you're not sharing it with the marketplace, you're not offering that as a service, you're being very selfish. It's painful to say that and accept that because you think I'm not good enough and all those things that go into our mindset, right? You're being very selfish. You're not serving the community as a greater by not offering how you could help somebody. Because at the end of the day, we all need and want help. And if you can resonate with somebody, then that's where a transaction will happen, right? So then that evolves into so much other stuff.
To our audience, please get those books.com Secrets and Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. What is your number 1 book that you would say to early entrepreneur?
I have these books here for a reason. It's this one here. by Alex Hormozy, $100 million offers. Again, you see all my notes in there, right? Because I've read that book numerous times. I'm going to skim back through it today. So those 3 books, Expert Secrets, .com Secrets, and $100 million offers. If you read those 3 books, you can get up and running quickly and you can be successful if you just read those 3 books. And again, whether you're doing e-commerce, SaaS, or even if you do coaching, it doesn't matter. All the principles are laid out in those books on how you create an offer and then how you identify your avatar, like Russell talks about. You do all the work and you just can solve a problem in the marketplace. You build a community. And if you do those steps, you can be successful. Easier said than done. I get it. I understand. But it is a path that's worked over and over again. And if you would have told me, just to give you a little bit more context here, and thank you for your kind words about my 2 Comma Club, Priscilla, because, years prior to that, funnel hiking live, and that you see people going across stage and it's like a high school or college graduation. They're smart to do that because it gets the emotions inside of you going, wow, I want that. And I said that. And the year that I walked across stage, it was kind of a surreal experience. So if you'd have told me that 5 years ago, my wife and I would come up with an idea for a business selling an e-commerce product, we would sell it, start it from 0 and get it to 7 figures, I'd walk across stage and get that award, I would have fallen off my chair laughing. But that's what we did.
That's amazing. Thank you. It's a perfect way to stop, and it's a perfect way for people to know that Steve just gave us that you can do it. You can do it. And those books are amazing, by the way. To our audience, please, if you can go to skrpmedia.com/pocket. Steve, tell us about that.
Yeah, right now, as a way to help people, I am offering, so this is some of the coaching, right? And this is what's great about technology. Think about this. We're out, we're at the grocery store, we're doing something, you have this idea or this question, you're like, oh, I wish I could ask somebody like right now because it's on top of mind, especially if you're like the grocery store. Most people are not going to write it down, whatever that is, right? You're not going to pull a piece of paper out. So one of the things that came across with a new tool that's out there is that you can do this through your phone or on your desktop, is you would create an account, etc., and you can ask me a bunch of questions. I try to make it at a very nominal fee. So for just $97, for example, is that I will answer any one of your questions. We can do this all through the app. It's all tracked. It's all recorded, all the stuff. So you can communicate with me either through video, through text, through SMS, whatever that modality is, but they just make it convenient. So it's a new tool that's out there, which I really am falling in love with because it just makes it so much easier. That's just a way for people to kind of like, hey, I just have a question. I just want to run this by somebody. So I have a time slot that somebody can ask me any questions for $97, and I'll give them 20 minutes. And if we want to get into something different, we can do that too. But I just wanted to at least make that available. So I'm trying to make it affordable for people, if that helps.
Thank you so much. That's skrpmedia.com/pocket. Thank you, Steve, so much for your time. And Steve, I often ask this question as my last question. What has faith meant to you on your journey?
We have to have faith, right? We have to have faith in ourselves. We have to have faith in a higher power that's going to help us. We have to have faith in a community. In the world right now, we're going through some very challenging times, as we've just all been through the last couple of years, right? And one of the things that has got us through this is just faith in our ability. Whatever your beliefs are, I just tell people, whatever those beliefs are, you should have some form of belief in something better and higher than us. However you define that, the universe, whatever your religion is, there is something out there. And if you just use that, you can get through a lot of stuff and really rely on community, which goes back to, just to kind of tie this together, is why you'd want to try to get some coaching or join a mastermind, because you're going to be in a community of like-minded people who understand the struggle. And entrepreneurship is a very lonely endeavor when you're starting out, and you're going to be overwhelmed with a lot of things. And so if you're in that community, they can help alleviate some of that stress, because it's going to cause anxiety. Trust me, I've dealt with it, and you still deal with it to this day in a variety of nuances, right? But having that faith, though, tying back to your question, allows me to get through that, because I calm myself down by saying, wait a second, there's all this noise coming at me right now. Let me just calm down here, get organized. And then I kind of see this, some things like, okay, I got this. Everything's fine, right? But that's that faith that allows me to keep going.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for your time, sharing your story and your experience. And I know this is going to make a difference. Please, when you listen, apply, and let's get our businesses moving the way they should be. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you very much.
I hope you got a lot of information, a lot of actionable things out of these episodes. Please support us by going and leaving a review in your podcast listening app. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with the Reinventing Perspectives podcast. We value you. See you again next week.
It's time to reinvent.